For 4 years, I worked 2 jobs to put him through med school, paid the rent, cooked every meal, edited every paper. I built our life while he built his resume. Then, at his graduation party, in front of his professors and future colleagues, he raised a glass and introduced me as the girl who kept the house clean. I smiled like it didn't shatter me. But that was just the beginning. Because a few days later, I found out he wasn't just planning to leave me, he already had. He used to tell me I was his future. That everything he was working for, late night shifts, weekend study sessions, skip vacations, was for us. So when he stood in front of a room full of people, at his med school graduation, raised a glass and said, "And to Sarah, the one who made sure the dishes were done, and the fridge was stocked," I smiled. I smiled while my throat closed up and my stomach dropped. He didn't mention how I paid the rent on our 1-bedroom apartment for 4 years. He didn't mention how I worked doubles, skipped girls' trips, or sold my car to pay off his application fees. No, I was the babysitter. That's what his friend whispered to another guy at the back of the room when they thought I wasn't listening. "She's just the babysitter who got lucky. He's gonna upgrade now." I stood there in my old navy dress, the one he said looked professional, but not try hard, holding a champagne flute I bought from the clearance section at Target because we couldn't afford catering. I stood there, smiling like I didn't hear it, and I made a decision right then. I wasn't going to cry. Not at his party, not in front of his future colleagues. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had already started preparing for the day he'd outgrow me. Because something inside me had shifted the moment I found that email. The one he left open by accident. The one from Dr. Taylor. The subject line read, "Can't wait to start our new chapter." And I wasn't even in it. I didn't open the email. I didn't have to. Just seeing the words "new chapter" from the woman whose name he just happened to bring up constantly, Dr. Julia Taylor, chief resident at the hospital he was about to intern at, was enough. She was just a mentor, someone who saw his potential, the one who invited him to all those after-hours networking events that I wasn't really the right vibe for. That email was 3 weeks ago, and ever since, I'd been watching, quietly, carefully, like a scientist studying a specimen that might bite if startled. He started dressing better, started coming home late from study groups he didn't used to attend. He'd come in smelling like cologne I didn't own and start sentences with, "Julia says," before catching himself and switching to, "One of the doctors at the hospital says." I didn't say anything. I just nodded, made dinner, paid our internet bill, and filed it all away. Like when he told me he might need to move closer to the hospital once rotation started alone. "Just for the first year, babe. Long shifts, crazy hours. It's just more practical." I smiled through that too, but practicality had nothing to do with it. He was slowly peeling me off his life like a sticker. Gently, carefully, so no one would notice the residue left behind. That graduation party? That was supposed to be our celebration, our future. But instead I stood there watching him laugh with his classmates, arms slung around their shoulders, while I cleared plates off plastic folding tables. No one even asked if I was his girlfriend. They assumed I was the help. I felt invisible. Until he walked up. Not Liam, but Caleb, the only one from his program who ever remembered my name. "Hey, Sarah," he said gently. "You okay?" I nodded too fast. "You shouldn't have to clean up, you know," he added. "This is your night too." And in that moment, something inside me cracked, not in a broken way, in a dangerous way. Because Caleb wasn't the only one who noticed. Someone else at that party pulled me aside. Someone who had seen everything. And what she told me? It changed the whole game. Her name was Michelle. And she was the last person I expected to say anything. Michelle was one of those effortlessly polished girls. Long hair, neutral nails, soft smile that made everyone around her relax. She was the kind of woman who called her boyfriend babe and knew how to make small talk with surgeons' wives. She was also Julia Taylor's cousin. I'd only met her once before, briefly, at a fundraiser mixer, where Liam begged me not to wear heels, because you always walk funny in them. But tonight, she found me in the kitchen, quietly scrubbing a wine glass that wasn't even mine. "I probably shouldn't say this," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder, "but I just want you to know. I see you." That caught me off guard. I forced a smile, unsure if she was being nice or nice nasty. Then she leaned in closer. "I overheard Julia talking to one of the other residents last week. She said Liam would be moving in by July." I blinked. "What?" She said she had to be careful because he was still technically entangled, her word, not mine. But once he started his intern year, it would all be easier. No paper trail, no mess. The words sliced through me, one syllable at a time. Liam was moving in. With Julia? He hadn't even told me he got the apartment. Michelle bit her lip, clearly uncomfortable. Look, I don't want to cause drama, but I've watched you show up for him for years. You built him, and now he's erasing you. I nodded, once, slowly, like my body was moving on a 5-second delay from my brain. Thank you, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Really. She gave me a sad smile. Some men don't deserve to be built. They just want the house, not the architect. And with that, she walked away back to the champagne bubbles and the congratulations. I stood there gripping the edge of the kitchen counter so tightly my fingers turned white. Liam didn't know I knew. Not yet, but I'd been planning his celebration for months. Now I was going to plan my exit, and I wasn't leaving quietly. That night, I went home before Liam did. He stayed out with his classmates, probably getting drinks, probably texting Julia the second I walked out the door. I packed while the apartment was silent. Not everything, just the things he didn't buy. The KitchenAid mixer I saved up for after my promotion. The soft throw blanket from my mom. My framed diploma, the one he used to joke about, saying, "Bachelor of Arts? Cute. You should have gone for something useful." I pulled out the shoebox from the back of our closet. The one filled with pay stubs, rent receipts, bills in my name. Proof that I'd been paying for more than just takeout and toilet paper while he chased his white coat dream. And then, I opened my laptop. See, Liam might have been careless with his heart, but he was worse with passwords. His email? Still saved on my computer from the time he forgot to print his cover letter. So I read everything. Not just from Julia, from the lease agent confirming his move-in date, from his mom congratulating him on finally finding someone with a future, from his advisor, forwarding him a fellowship application that asked about family commitments, to which he had responded single, no dependents. I took screenshots of everything. By the time Liam walked in, half drunk and humming some Post Malone song, I was sitting on the couch calm, cross-legged, like I hadn't just watched my future collapse like a Jenga tower. "Hey babe," he slurred. "Party was crazy. You okay?" I just smiled. "I'm great," and I meant it, because tomorrow morning, I had a meeting with someone very important. No, not a therapist, not a lawyer. Better, his future employer's PR director. And the story I had to tell was about to go viral. The hospital where Liam matched for residency had a shiny new diversity and inclusion campaign. Billboards, Instagram reels, a whole highlight on their website called Partners in Progress, which, ironically, included a photo of Liam standing in scrubs next to a smiling nurse, and the tagline, "Compassion begins at home." Home. What a joke. So that morning, with my folder of receipts and a dangerously calm smile, I walked into the administrative building downtown, where the PR department shared an office suite with physician outreach. I didn't have an appointment, but when I walked up to the front desk and said, "Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm Liam Carter's longtime partner, and I think your hospital might want to know who you're about to make the face of your brand," they found someone. Fast. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I told them facts, that I had supported Liam financially and emotionally through all 4 years of med school, that we shared an apartment, bank accounts, and a life until he started erasing me, slowly, quietly, and that his fresh start involved a secret relationship with a supervising physician at the same hospital. I handed them copies of emails, texts, a photo of Julia and Liam at the networking retreat he swore was men only. They asked if I was looking for legal recourse. I said no. I just wanted them to know who they were putting on their posters. By the time I left, the PR director had that tight smile corporate people use when they realize something's about to go very, very wrong. And I walked out of there feeling taller than I felt in years. I turned my phone on airplane mode, stopped for an oat milk latte, and finally texted Liam. Just one sentence. "You might want to check your work email." Then I blocked his number. That night, I slept like I hadn't in months. No more waiting up. No more pretending not to notice when he turned his phone face down. No more wondering if I was being paranoid. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. But what I didn't expect was the knock on my door 3 days later, and the woman on the other side. She was holding a toddler. That's the first thing I noticed. Chubby cheeks, one shoe missing, a tiny fist gripping a plastic toy dinosaur. The woman holding him looked tired, not in a mom life is hard kind of way, tired in the soul. That kind of tired you only get when someone you trusted lit your world on fire and handed you the match like it was a gift. "Are you Sarah?" she asked, her voice hoarse. I nodded, heart pounding. "Yeah. Can I help you?" She looked me up and down like she didn't know whether to cry or scream. Then she said it. "I'm Elise, Liam's wife." My knees actually buckled. Not ex-girlfriend. Not current fling. Not even secret fiancé. Wife. The baby on her hip? Liam's son. Everything went fuzzy. Like someone had shoved cotton in my ears and pulled the color out of the world. She stepped inside when I didn't move, gently pushing the door closed behind her. She didn't even wait for me to invite her in. She looked around the apartment like she'd been here before, like she was searching for signs of her own life in my living room. I thought I was the only one, she whispered, rocking the baby on her hip. I still hadn't said a word. Liam? Married. With a child. Living a double life while I was funding his degree. I saw your name on a utilities bill he left in the glove compartment, she said, pulling a crumpled paper from her purse. Then I saw the graduation photos on Facebook, and I knew something was wrong. She'd driven 2 hours to get here, with a baby, with his baby. I finally found my voice. How long have you been married? 3 years, she said. He told me he was working extra hours to save up for a house. I laughed. It came out like a gasp. He told me he couldn't propose because of student loans. The silence between us said everything. We were both just placeholders, carefully curated characters in Liam's fantasy life. She handed me a flash drive. He left this in the computer at home. Photos, documents. I don't know what half of it means, but I figured you'd want a copy. And then, before I could even process what she meant by a home, her son let out a squeal and dropped the dinosaur. She picked it up, straightened her shoulders, and said, "I'm filing for divorce." I nodded, too stunned to respond. She turned toward the door. He's not just a liar, Sarah. He's a professional con. And as she left, I realized something chilling. Liam didn't just cheat on me. He built me and Elise like separate wings of the same house. And now? It was time to burn it all down. The second Elise left, I locked the door, slid to the floor, and stared at that flash drive like it was a ticking bomb. Because in a way, it was. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was architecture. Liam had engineered a life where two women existed side by side without ever colliding. Separate bank accounts, separate lies, separate versions of himself depending on who he was talking to. And I, me, the woman who cooked his meals, bought his MCAT books, stayed up with him when he had panic attacks. I was the side plot. I plugged in the flash drive and opened the first folder. Residency plans. Dozens of PDFs and spreadsheets, most of them with names I didn't recognize. But one thing kept popping up. Hotel receipts. One from last spring, dated the same weekend I had strep throat, and he claimed to be on call. There were also saved drafts of letters recommendations he wrote for himself, pretending to be professors, emails he never sent. And the worst? A wedding video. Not ours, theirs, Elise and Liam, in a tiny backyard ceremony. Him in a pale blue suit, her in a sleeveless gown with flowers in her hair. It was dated 18 months ago. 18 months, which meant when he told me he was taking space to focus on step 2, he was actually getting married. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. Because of course, I was the fool standing in line at CVS, buying him electrolyte packets while he was honeymooning. By 2 a.m., I had a full folder of screenshots, labeled, dated, categorized by lie. Every receipt, every document, every proof of double life. Then I opened a blank Word doc and started writing. Not a diary, not a breakup letter, a story, a full, first-person account, what he did, how he manipulated both of us, the money I spent, the emotional labor, the years I gave him without ever asking for anything back. I didn't hold back. Not this time. Because if he wanted to become a doctor, a respected man, someone people trust, I was about to show the world exactly what that trust would cost. And the next morning, I hit send. Not just to the hospital's PR department this time, but to the licensing board, the local residency review committee, and a journalist friend of my cousin's who had just gone viral with a feature on med school ethics scandals. I didn't feel guilty, I felt free. But I wasn't done, because there was one more person who deserved the truth. And she had been on my side from the very beginning, without even knowing it. Her name was Marian Carter, and she'd always signed her birthday cards to me with a little heart above the I in my name. We weren't close, but we had our rituals. She'd text me every Christmas to ask what Liam wanted. I'd send her photos of the dinner I made when he was pulling all-nighters. She called me his better half. I don't think she ever imagined he'd be the kind of man who needed a better quarter. Still, I hesitated before reaching out. I'd already torched his professional future, now I was standing at the edge of something personal. But then I remembered something. The way Liam used to roll his eyes when she called. The way he always sent her to voicemail and said, "She's being dramatic again." The way he once said, "She's lucky I even talked to her after what she did to my dad." It had always struck me as off, so I dialed her number. She picked up on the second ring, like she'd been waiting for something she couldn't explain. "Sarah? Hi, Marian," I said, and my voice shook a little, not with fear, but with the weight of everything I was about to lay down between us. She sounded surprised. "Is everything okay? Liam said you were traveling." Of course he did. I took a breath and said, "No, actually, I think there's something you should know about your son." There was a long pause, and then she said something I didn't expect. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you." "Wait, what? What do you mean?" I asked, completely thrown. She sighed. "He's always been like this, charming, slippery. He gets away with everything because people want to believe the best in him." I did, for years. That's when I sat down. Because Marian Carter, she knew. She knew he had a history of lying. She knew he'd cheated on previous girlfriends. She even knew about Elise, because Liam called her in a panic the day Elise found out, and begged her not to say anything. "I didn't know what to do," she admitted. "He's my son." "But you're a good person, Sarah." I could see it, and I knew this would catch up to him eventually. I felt this strange mix of validation and sadness, like I'd been carrying a house on my back for 4 years, only to find out everyone saw the cracks but no one said a word. "He's not coming back from this one," she said softly. "I'm not trying to destroy him," I replied. "I just don't want him to do this to anyone else." She was quiet for a long moment, then said, "If there's anything I can do to help, I will. I mean that." And just like that, his mother became my unexpected ally, the woman who raised him, the woman who watched him become someone she barely recognized. I hung up the phone feeling steadier, not because I needed revenge, but because I had finally been seen. But the funny thing about telling the truth, sometimes it ripples. And 3 days later, someone else reached out. This time, it was Julia. Julia Taylor didn't reach out with a text. She sent me an email. Subject line, "I think we need to talk." At first, I thought it was a trap, some kind of damage control. A lawyer-approved apology from the polished, picture-perfect doctor, who, whether knowingly or not, helped Liam build his double life. But then I opened it, and the first sentence shattered that theory. I just found out about Elise and the baby. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. She'd found out the same way I did through the wildfire that followed Liam's unraveling. The hospital whispers, the HR inquiry, the residency committee that called her in just to ask a few questions. Julia wasn't covering for Liam anymore. She was reeling. We met in the most neutral, least cinematic place possible. A Panera Bread halfway between our neighborhoods. No eyeliner, no walls up, no power blazers. Just two women who'd been lied to with surgical precision. Julia looked smaller than I remembered, like someone who'd been pulled through the ringer of her own life and still hadn't fully come out the other side. "I know I probably seem like the villain in your story," she started. I shook my head. "I thought you were. But Liam made sure none of us had the whole story." She nodded slowly. "He told me you'd broken up, said you were bitter, jealous, that you were trying to sabotage his career because he finally chose someone who supported him." I actually laughed. "You mean the man who couldn't even do his own taxes without calling my mom?" Julia winced. "I didn't know he was married either. Elise messaged me after she saw your post." She sipped her coffee and looked down at her hands. "The worst part is I almost defended him. I almost believed him. Because that's what Liam does, right? He gets inside your head, makes you feel like you're the one being unreasonable. And by the time you start asking questions, it's already too late." We sat there for over an hour, stitching together the timelines, comparing notes, realizing how many lies overlap, how many conferences and night shifts he used as excuses for all of us. Julia's hands were trembling when she finally said it. "I was going to move in with him. I thought we were planning a future." And all I could say was, "So did I." It didn't feel like vengeance, it felt like release, because now there were 3 of us who knew the truth, and none of us were going to protect him anymore. Before we left, Julia reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. "I don't know if this helps," she said, sliding it across the table. "But these are copies of his intern applications, and I think you'll find a lot of contradictions." I took it, not for revenge, but for record keeping, because Liam's lies weren't just personal anymore. They were professional. And this time, he wasn't walking away clean. 3 days later, I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop, the one with the chipped teal mugs and the girl who always slips me extra whipped cream, editing my resume and pretending my entire world hadn't just been leveled like a bad game of Jenga. My phone buzzed. No caller ID. I let it ring once, twice. Then something in me said, "Pick up." "Hello? Hi. Is this Sarah Morgan?" The voice asked, crisp, measured, professional. "Yes. Who's calling?" "This is Daniel Ruiz. Director of Graduate Medical Education at St. Alora's Hospital. I was given your contact information by our PR team. I believe you submitted a formal concern regarding one of our incoming residents? I blinked. My heart stuttered. Yes, Liam Carter. A pause. The kind that holds weight. We'd like to thank you for bringing this to our attention. After further review of Mr. Carter's application materials and corroborating testimony from additional individuals, we've made the decision to place him under an internal ethics review before the start of his residency. I sat up straight. What does that mean exactly? It means, he said carefully, he won't be starting on July 1st. His contract is suspended pending investigation. My throat tightened, not with victory, but with vindication. Finally, someone with power was taking this seriously. There's one more thing, Daniel added. One of the concerns flagged involved potential falsification of mentorship recommendations. Did you happen to see any evidence of that? I did, I said. I sent it in the attachments, but I have more if you need it. We might. He hesitated again, then added, off the record. We've seen applicants bend the truth before. But this? This was orchestrated. I knew what he meant. Liam didn't just fudge a few dates or exaggerate a role. He constructed an entire identity built on women who thought they were helping him succeed. And now, finally, it was falling apart. Thank you again for your bravery, Daniel said before hanging up. Most people wouldn't have come forward. I hung up and stared at the wall. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. But in that stillness, something shifted. Liam wasn't just exposed, he was accountable. And I wasn't a babysitter anymore. I was a witness. Still, I knew it wasn't over. Because karma might have finally caught up to Liam professionally. But personally, he was spiraling. And when a man like Liam spirals, he doesn't go quietly. He showed up next day. No warning, no text, no knock. Just the sharp click of my apartment door swinging open, because Liam still had a key. I'd meant to change the locks. I hadn't gotten around to it yet. I was sitting on the floor, sorting through a box of old receipts, most of them for dinners I paid for, textbooks I bought, oil changes for his car when I heard it. I stood up slowly, and there he was, disheveled, pale, wearing the same hoodie I bought him last Christmas, the one he'd called too clingy but never took off. Eyes bloodshot, hair a mess, the kind of unraveling that happens after you realize your mask isn't going to save you anymore. Sarah, he said, voice cracking like he'd practiced sounding broken. You need to leave, I said, already reaching for my phone. I just need 5 minutes. Liam, I'm not kidding. He stepped forward, hands raised. I know I messed everything up. I know I don't deserve to be here. But please, just let me say this. I hesitated not because I trusted him, but because I wanted to hear what excuse he'd lead with this time. He exhaled, shaky and dramatic. I panicked. I was under so much pressure, and I thought I could juggle it, that I could make it right before it all exploded. I never meant to hurt you. You didn't hurt me, I said. You used me. He blinked, caught off guard. I built your entire life while you built an escape plan, I added, voice steady. So no, Liam, you don't get to cry and hope it resets the game. He looked down, jaw clenched. They've suspended my residency. I know, I said. I told the truth, that's all. Then came the twist. Julia left me, he said, his voice hollow. She's talking to HR about boundaries, says she feels manipulated. I tilted my head. Imagine that. He laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was bitter, fractured. You think you've won, don't you? No, I said softly. I think I finally stopped losing. He opened his mouth, probably to launch into some grand speech, some Hail Mary, full of half apologies and rewritten history. But then I held up the keychain in my hand. His spare. You don't live here anymore, Liam. I dropped it into the trash without looking away. You never really did. He stared at me like I was a stranger. And maybe I was. Because the woman standing in front of him wasn't the one who packed his lunches, paid his bills, or clapped the loudest at his white coat ceremony. She was someone new, someone done. He left without another word. And this time, he didn't slam the door. Because even he knew there was nothing left to slam.